The year is 800 AD. We are in Baghdad, the recently founded capital of the Abbasid Caliphate and probably the largest city on earth. Within a single human lifetime, this place has exploded from open countryside into a perfectly designed round city of high brick walls, 4 monumental gates, palace complexes, mosques, markets, and a population that may already be approaching 1 million souls, an almost unimaginable concentration of human life in this age. The Caliphate stretches in every direction, from the Atlantic coast of Morocco in the west, across North Africa, through Egypt and Syria, across the Arabian Peninsula, through Persia, and onward to the borders of India and Central Asia. Goods, ideas, languages, and gold flow into Baghdad from 3 continents. The currents of Asian silk, African gold, Indian spices, and Greek philosophy meet here in the marketplaces along the Tigris River, and they reshape the world. Ruling this vast realm, in a palace at the city's heart, sits a single man whose subjects believe him to be the rightful successor of the Prophet himself, the commander of the faithful. You are that man. You are the Caliph, and Baghdad is your dazzling, restless, brilliant capital, where the wealth of empires becomes the patronage of poetry, science, music, and books. Using advanced AI trained on the surviving Arabic chronicles, the records of foreign travelers and ambassadors who visited the Abbasid court, the inventories of the great libraries, the legends that grew up around this age and helped to inspire the famous 1001 Nights, and the breathtaking artifacts of the Islamic Golden Age that still survive in museums, we have reconstructed a single day in the life of an Abbasid Caliph at the height of his glory. Step into the city of peace. But understand the central paradox of this court from the very first moment. The supreme religious leader of the Muslim world, whose authority rests upon piety and devotion, rules from a palace of legendary luxury where the highest art is not war or conquest, but the cultivation of knowledge. The deepest luxury of your court is thought. Anywhere in the world, a wealthy man can fill his table with food or his halls with gold. The great courts of every age have done it. But in Baghdad, the most extraordinary patronage is poured into something subtler, into translations from foreign tongues, into astronomical instruments, into medical schools, into observatories, into vast libraries holding tens of thousands of volumes. Your civilization is at this moment engaged in one of the greatest intellectual projects in human history, the systematic translation into Arabic of nearly every important book ever written in Greek, Persian, Syriac, Sanskrit, and beyond. Some caliphs are said to pay translators in gold equal to the weight of the books they finish. The men with the most prestige at your court are not always your generals, but your astronomers, your philosophers, your court physicians, your master mathematicians. Wisdom itself is the truest currency of Baghdad. You wake in the heart of the great palace complex, an enormous walled enclosure of courtyards, gardens, audience halls, fountains, and private apartments, set close to the Tigris. Your private chambers are cool and shaded against the fierce Iraqi sun. The walls are lined with intricately carved stucco, the floors covered with deep Persian carpets in glowing patterns of red, blue, and gold. Marble fountains play in the courtyards just beyond your rooms, their water carried from the river through clay pipes and channels, cooling the air, soothing the senses, and serving as a quiet, constant reminder that command of water is command of life in this desert civilization. Songbirds chirp in cages hung in the gardens. Tame gazelles graze among the lawns. In some of the great Abbasid palaces, the rulers have even kept menageries of exotic animals. Lions, leopards, monkeys, peacocks, even an elephant sent as a diplomatic gift by a faraway emperor, the wonder of the entire city. You are dressed by silent attendants in clothing of exquisite refinement. Layers of fine linen and silk, dyed in soft, rich colors and embroidered with patterns of vines, palm fronds, and Arabic calligraphy. Your outer robe may be of brocade so heavy with gold thread that it stands on its own. A turban is wound carefully around your head, its color and style chosen with care, since the Abbasids favor a particular dynastic color, often black, in their official garments. Around your shoulders you wear, on solemn occasions, what is held to be one of the most sacred objects in the realm, a cloak that tradition links to the prophet himself, kept by his successors as a symbol of legitimate authority. Perfume is applied to your skin, musk from the deer of Central Asia, ambergris from the seas, rose attar distilled in Persia, and oud, the precious resinous wood of Southeast Asia, the most expensive scent in the world. When you walk into a room, your presence announces itself first through fragrance. By mid-morning, the great machinery of governance turns toward you. Your empire is administered by an enormous and highly literate civil service, drawing on the older traditions of Persian bureaucracy that the Abbasids have absorbed. At its head sits your Grand Vizier, drawn often from a celebrated family of administrators of Persian origin, men whose mastery of state finance, taxation, and protocol is so complete that the Caliph's success or failure can rise and fall on their advice. Below the Grand Vizier sit ranks of secretaries, treasurers, tax collectors, judges, and intelligence agents in every province of the empire. Your court receives reports from governors in Egypt, Khorasan, North Africa, the holy cities of Mecca and Medina, the provinces of Persia, and the frontier garrisons facing the Christian Empire of Byzantium. Foreign embassies come to your court bearing tribute, ambassadors from Christian kings to the west, from the rulers of inland Africa, from the steppe princes of the north, from the courts of India, and even, on rare occasions, from imperial China far to the east. The relationship between your court and the distant court of the Frankish king Charlemagne, who will one day be crowned Holy Roman Emperor in Rome, is already a subject of diplomatic gifts and prestige, with one famous Caliph said to have sent the Frankish ruler an extraordinary elephant as a present, an animal that became a wonder across all of Europe. The treasury that funds all this is staggering. Tax revenues flow into Baghdad from every province in gold dinars and silver dirhams, coins so reliable that they are accepted from Spain to China as the dominant currency of long-distance trade. Baghdad sits at the perfect commercial junction of the world. Caravans arrive overland from China bearing silks and porcelain. Dhows sail up the Persian Gulf from India and East Africa with spices, ivory, slaves, and gemstones. Boats descend the Tigris and Euphrates with grain and timber. The markets of your city, called souks, are organized by trade, with whole streets dedicated to booksellers, papermakers, perfumers, jewelers, swordsmiths, money changers, and silk merchants. Paper itself, a marvelous new technology learned by your civilization from contacts with the Chinese world, is being manufactured in Baghdad on an industrial scale, far cheaper and more durable than the parchment used in Christian Europe. Cheap paper makes cheap books. Cheap books make the great translation movement possible. The intellectual revolution of your age sits, in a very real sense, upon sheets of paper. And so we come to the most extraordinary institution of your reign, the great library and learning complex, known to history as the House of Wisdom. Here, scholars from every background, Muslims, Christians, Jews, Persians, Indians, Greeks, are gathered, paid handsomely from your treasury, and set to the task of translating and commenting upon the entire intellectual inheritance of the ancient world. Texts of Aristotle and Plato, of Galen and Hippocrates, of the great mathematicians and astronomers of Greece, of Persian wisdom literature, of Indian numerical and astronomical works, all are sought out, purchased at enormous cost, sometimes obtained by treaty from the Byzantine court in exchange for political favors, and then rendered into Arabic. Around this work bloom new sciences. Mathematicians at your court refine and spread a system of numbers from India that the world will one day call Arabic numerals. The very word algebra is born from an Arabic title written by a scholar associated with the House of Wisdom. Astronomers chart the sky from observatories built with your funds. Physicians compile encyclopedias of medical knowledge that European universities will still be using 600 years later. You are not merely the patron of these scholars. You are, in the great tradition of your dynasty, often a student of them yourself, debating, questioning, sometimes commissioning specific works on subjects that have caught your imagination. Your family is, like any great dynasty, a knot of love and danger. Your court includes wives, concubines, sons, and daughters. The harem of the Abbasid Caliph is a vast private institution, organized within the palace, where free wives and unfree concubines live together under elaborate hierarchies. Many of these women come from across the empire and beyond. Arab noblewomen, Persians, Greeks, and women from Central Asia, prized for their beauty, their wit, or their education in music and poetry. Some become formidable figures in their own right, their voices shaping decisions and successions behind the scenes. Your mother in particular may wield great influence as the mother of the Caliph, a position of enormous informal power in court politics. Your sons, however, are also rivals. Abbasid history is full of brothers who fought wars of succession for the throne, including a great civil war between two of your descendants that will one day tear the empire apart and damage Baghdad itself. The same court that raises poets and translators also breeds conspirators, and even your closest officials, including a once trusted family of viziers, can be brought down in a single night if the Caliph senses their power has grown too great. The most famous fall of all, the destruction of a beloved vizier family that had served the dynasty for generations, will be sung in stories long afterward as a warning of how quickly the Caliph's favor can turn into death. In the afternoon, you go out, sometimes openly in great procession, sometimes secretly in disguise. Tradition holds that some caliphs of this age, the most famous of them especially, take to walking the streets of Baghdad at night in plain clothes, accompanied only by a trusted vizier and bodyguard, listening to ordinary citizens, hearing what they truly say about the government, and dispensing personal justice on the spot. Whether or not every such story is true, the legends themselves grew into the famous tales of the 1,001 Nights, where caliphs slip into the city to find adventure and reveal hidden truths. The myth is a window into the reality. Your power is not built only on armies and taxes. It is also built on the careful management of your image as a just and pious ruler, accessible to the humblest of your subjects through the proper channels of petition, sermon, and rumor. As evening falls in your palace, you preside over a banquet that is the climax of your day. Guests recline on cushions around low tables. Servants bring water and rose-scented towels for the washing of hands. Then comes a parade of dishes drawing on the cuisines of an empire, spiced lamb stews from Persia, fragrant rice dishes called pilafs, roasted fowl rubbed with saffron and pepper, sweet date cakes, almond and pistachio sweets soaked in honey and rosewater, sherbets cooled with snow rushed down from distant mountains, and a wealth of fresh fruit, melons, pomegranates, figs, grapes. Despite the Quranic prohibition on wine, the court of certain caliphs of this dynasty has been famous for its love of poetry written in praise of wine and beautiful companions, and the question of whether and how the caliph himself indulges has been argued by chroniclers and theologians for centuries. But the most refined pleasures around your table are intellectual. Court poets recite verses composed on the spot, sometimes engaging in fierce poetic duels for your favor. Musicians play the lute, the harp, and the reed flute. Singers, often highly trained slave women known across the empire for their voices, perform songs that scholars debate and theorize about in serious treatises. Philosophers argue about logic. Astronomers report on the latest observations. A successful evening at the caliph's table is judged not by the food alone, but by the brilliance of the conversation. Late at night, the palace lamps burn low. You retire to your private quarters, perhaps with a small group of intimates, perhaps alone with a book. You command the most powerful state in the world. You hold the religious authority of the commander of the faithful. You sit at the center of a network of knowledge stretching from China to Iberia. And yet, you know, like every caliph before you, how dangerous this throne can be. Your dynasty came to power by overthrowing the previous one in a bloody revolution. Your own family has produced both legendary patrons of culture and rulers murdered by their own guards. The history of the Caliphate is a story of brilliance and bloodshed entwined. For when you die, your funeral will be a model of Islamic restraint and dynastic dignity at once. Your body, by religious custom, will be washed, wrapped in simple white shrouds, and buried as soon as possible, often within a day, facing the holy city of Mecca, with the prayers prescribed by faith. There will be no embalming, no grand sarcophagus, no monumental statue of you to gaze across the centuries. And yet your tomb may be sheltered by a great domed shrine, perhaps integrated into a mosque complex you yourself helped to build during your life, decorated with verses of the Quran in soaring calligraphy, with charitable foundations, schools, and fountains attached, so that pilgrims and the poor will be served in your name for generations. But your truest immortality lies elsewhere. It lies in the books your scholars copied and translated, which will, in time, travel across the Mediterranean to Spain, into Sicily, and onward into Christian Europe, where they will help to ignite an intellectual revival that ends in the Renaissance. It lies in the numerals your mathematicians spread, in the medicine your physicians refined, in the stars your astronomers named. Long after your palace is gone and your dynasty is dust, the world will be using the words, the numbers, and the ideas that flowed out of your court along the Tigris, and the name Baghdad will mean, for centuries to come, a kind of dream of what civilization at its finest might be. That was a glimpse into the life of a Caliph of Baghdad in 800 AD. A life of immense political power and even more astonishing cultural ambition, lived at the head of a faith, a state, and an intellectual project that together helped to shape the modern world. They were patrons of poets, sponsors of translators, builders of cities, commanders of armies, and the heirs of the Prophet, ruling from a circular city on the Tigris that was, for a brilliant century or two, the brain and heart of the inhabited world. The dynasty would eventually decline. Baghdad itself would be sacked and burned by Mongol armies 4 centuries after this day, and the long Abbasid Caliphate would come, at last, to its end. But the books survived, the science survived, the numerals, the words, the medical wisdom, the poetry, travelled out from Baghdad across the world and into the foundations of every modern field of knowledge. Empires of conquest are usually remembered for what they destroyed. The caliphs of Baghdad are remembered for what they preserved.